Hello, Jameson Spencer here, going to shoot a quick video on how to use the George gauge. Now, I've shot a bunch of videos over the years on how to do George gauges. You may remember one from about a decade ago where I had a heck of a lot longer hair. If you have seen that one recently, just disregard most of that. Not all of it, some of it's still true. I did a video a few years ago with a little shorter hair, and now I'm making another video, all with the George gauge. What the heck? So how I've used the George gauge over the years has changed a little bit. And so I think I've got it more refined now and more predictable, which I've learned mostly through mentoring a lot of dentists and helping them with these bite registrations and getting consistent results from the labs. So let me show you how to use the George gauge. First, I better put on some gloves so I don't get any Jenny's icky spit on me. Ugh. Wife spit. You don't want that on you, right? I bet you dentists out there too, you probably wear gloves when you work on your wife too, don't you? So anyway, so we're going to open this box here. This is the George gauge. I hear that box opening videos are very popular on YouTube, so I thought we'd do one. Okay, we got our instructions here. You can pretty much throw that away as far as I'm concerned. Here is the handle, and this is the handle. Now this is not heat sterilized, so it will melt it. So it's cold sterilized, and you got to keep this. The forks come in the package. We have gray forks and white forks. The white forks are 5mm interincisal opening. The gray forks are 2, and they have kind of a wide arch, and then one that is more kind of a standard or a more narrow arch. I'll go ahead and we'll use the wide ones. Now, I used to say, so one of the changes that I've made over the years is I used to say that you use the white one all the time, except in deep overbite cases, and then you'd use the gray one. Now, the white fork, again, is 5mm interincisal. The gray is 2. But I've changed that. So now I virtually never use the white fork except in people with an anterior open bite. And that's because with the 2mm, they will not even get their teeth to touch it. So I use this now in anterior open bite pretty much only, and the 2mm all the rest of the time. Now the reason that is I like the appliances to be made at a minimal vertical, a minimal VDO. And that minimal vertical is basically going to be set based on the appliance design. So some appliances need 5 or 6 or 7 in the front because that's where the mechanism is. Others can be lower in the front. But my concern with using the 5 is their teeth virtually never go into that little notch. Their teeth get hung up here, and so we end up being 7, 8, 9mm open in the front, and that may be too much vertical opening, and you could have gotten away with a lower vertical opening. I like the VDO on the appliance to be minimal, and then we can always add more vertical. For most of the appliances, reducing vertical is challenging. Adding vertical is far easier. Now, the big caveat to what I just said would be if you're using a monoblock, an adjustable monoblock type of an appliance, like the Moses, the PM Positioner, the Clearway, something like that, where your vertical is basically impossible to change once that appliance has been fabricated. You would need to basically start over. So in those appliances, you want to make sure that your vertical and your starting AP are right where you want them. For most of the other type of designs, your anterior pull appliance, your push appliance like Herbst, pull appliances like EMAs and Narvals, your interlocking appliances like Somnameds, dorsals, things like that, you can get away with having an initial minimal vertical. All right, so back to our George gauge, we have this little blue piece, and we can loosen this up, and the blue piece is going to slide and open and close here, and this is to give us room for the lower incisors. So for most people, we're going to have that open just basically the width of their incisor. So I'll open that up just a titch. I look at Jenny's teeth, and her teeth, going open a little bit, open. Her teeth are straight. She has a lingual bar for a retainer, and so I'm going to just put this over and make sure that her incisal edges touch the blue and it doesn't flex it. So that's the thing you're going to do there. Now, once you've done that, you've actually changed these markings a little bit, and as I'll show in a second, I couldn't care less about the markings anyway. Now, this is unique to me. So most people that you hear talk about the George gauge, they're going to say things like 70% maximum intrusion, 60% maximum intrusion, stuff like that. I never talk about that. Couldn't care less about that. The reason I couldn't care less about that is the appliances nowadays are so adjustable. We have so much ability to adjust the appliance that I want to start patients at comfortably protruded, and then we can move forward from there. I don't think it's necessary to start people at 70 or 80% of their ability to come forward. We just don't need to do that most of the time, so we can start them in a more comfortable position. And I find a lot of patients, particularly younger, thinner patients, are going to do fine in a very comfortable position. It's not about jacking their jaw forward, it's more about keeping their jaw from falling backwards. So now that we've got the blue thing set, we can slide in the top part. And I'm going to leave that loose so it can move back and forth. So I'm not going to tighten down this screw just yet. I'm going to let it so it can go back and forth. So I put this in, close down, and then have Jenny move forward and backwards and forward and backwards. And now just bring your jaw comfortably forward. Okay? And I kind of screw that down, and then I'm going to look at her teeth, and she is basically end to end. Basically end to end. Now, another thing we could do here is, open for me, is I could have her make a snoring noise in the back of her throat. Go ahead and do that. And then open and close and make that same noise there. And it's very difficult for her to make the noise in that position. So I'll sometimes do that with the patient just as a bit of a psychological, oh, I get it. I bring my jaw forward and it's harder to make that noise. And they will relate to that. Now, I mentioned the word comfortably protruded. So comfortably protruded is for two people, for the patient and me. So let's say, open for me and close. And I told Jenny to take her jaw forward and backwards and forward. And now take it forward comfortably for you and just exaggerate and go way far forward. And she says, well, that's comfortable. And I look and she is way forward. I would say, you know what, that seems a little aggressive. So I just saw, I didn't measure it. You can mark down how far forward, how far back. You can do all that. That's fine with me. But I just saw how far forward she moved. And at that point, she's at about, I just said I'll never use this phrase, but she's about 80 to 90% of her maximum protrusion of what she just did that minute. Is that really her maximum? Probably not, but it's just that moment is what she did. So I would look at that, say, that's a little bit aggressive. Go ahead and relax your jaw back a little bit and say, how does that feel?
Good.
Feels fine. And then she's back to end to end. So that's how I find my initial position, is I want it comfortable for the patient and me. So it's comfortably protruded for two people, the patient and you. Then you know you're at the spot. Once you're at the spot there, then it's pretty straightforward. We're going to get our blue bite or whatever bite registration material you want to use. Load up this fork. I find that using the super fast set is too fast. So typically fast set is ideal. Super fast is too fast. Okay, I'm going to put this in, close down. Okay, I watched to see when she closed that there was nothing getting in her way. We didn't move her jaw to one side or the other. And this will just take a few seconds to set up here. The fork itself makes it so that there's no way that her jaw can shift backwards or forwards because of how the fork is designed. By the way, there are a lot of different systems out there that you can use. There's the Pro gauge, there's the Airway Metrics gauges, and I'll show you a way to do this in a second too. If you're super cheap and don't want to buy any of this stuff, there's a way to take this bite registration too. Because really what we're doing is we just want a position with the jaw a little forward, kind of down that articular eminence. We want to capture that for our starting position. And then that makes adjusting the appliance easier from there. Let me see. Good. Okay, we're set. Open for me. All right. Now the last step, which is critical, I believe, is we take this off. Now the fork is what's going to go to the lab. But the little critical bit here is I like to put this back in the mouth and then have the patient close and open and close and open and close and open. And you can see, go ahead and keep doing that, that Jenny does not deflect. She just opens and closes right to that spot. Open for me. That's critical. If you see the patient without the handle, so the handle, because of this blue part here, it can deflect the jaw one way or the other. So take the handle off, have just the fork, and have them try that in and close and open and close and open and close and open, and make sure that there's nothing deflecting the jaw. If I saw that she was deflecting, it was pushing her to one side, it was unnatural arc of closure, then I would start over and do it again. Now, like I said, if you are super duper cheap and you don't want to buy a George gauge, they're about 50 bucks, and you don't want to do that, you could use tongue depressors. So you could have the patient bite down, bring their jaw forward and backwards and forwards and backwards and come forward comfortably, which is the same spot that she was before. And that is about 1.5 millimeters of vertical open for me. If we wanted to make that a little wider, we could break the tongue depressor in half, put it in 2 of them, and then all we would do is with the tongue depressor in place, we would squirt the blue mousse on the back teeth, and that would be our bite registration. So there's nothing super critical about these other than you don't want to deflect the jaw. You want to start in a comfortably protruded position. Again, that's the Jamison Spencer sort of language of doing this. I promise everyone else is going to talk about 50, 60, 70% protrusion, stuff like that. Couldn't care less about that. Where that all came from, I don't want to give you a history lesson right now. You can watch one of the older films for that if you'd like, but it has to do with what Peter George, the inventor of the George gauge, his appliance was one piece. So he would bring the patient pretty far forward because he found through trial and error and also through research that that was a good position for them to be in, but he couldn't adjust the appliance. So I believe we don't treat statistics. So I would rather start comfortable for the patient. And if we open the airway at that spot, fantastic, we're done. If we need to come farther forward, all the appliances allow us to come 6 to 12 millimeters farther forward. That's quite a ways. So hopefully that makes sense. If it doesn't, shoot me an email, give me a call, whatever. But hopefully that makes sense on how to use the George gauge.